New reaction to the White House touting the Obamacare enrollment numbers, and it comes after President Obama said this just 2 days ago.
We didn't make a hard sell. We didn't have billions of dollars of commercials like some critics did.
But advertising the law did not come cheaply. An analyst from the AP back in July found the administration was preparing to spend nearly $700 million to promote this law. Chris Kofinas is the former chief of staff to Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, and Chris Wilson is a GOP consultant and former executive director for the Texas Republican Party. Chris Wilson, I will start with you first. Did President Obama make a hard sell spending $700 million on this?
Well, I guess his logic is because he didn't spend $1 billion, it wasn't a hard sell, but that's just taken absurdity to the absolute extreme. From the moment he ran this through Congress, he's run this like a political campaign. He's paid people to go into communities to organize. They've run ads on TV that have had nothing to do with the program or its benefits, have been about trying to make signing up hip. And when you watch the ads they put on, it's just, again, absurdity. And I think to make an argument that they spent more money than Apple spent last year. They spent more money on advertising than Walmart spent last year, and that's not a hard sell. Would anyone argue that this has been better sold than the iPhone or than Walmart as a store? I don't think so.
Chris Kofinas, get in here. Looking back at all the things that we saw President Obama, appear on Zach Galifianakis' show Between Two Ferns. They did a mocking impression of what's going on with Obamacare. They reached out to the young people with brosurance campaign depicting keg stands. Looks like a hard sell to a lot of people who see these numbers and see these campaigns.
Well, I guess if you got nothing else to criticize Obamacare about, now you're going to criticize in terms of how much money was spent to enroll people before. I mean, I find it just kind of amusing. Republicans were touting the fact that this was a disaster, this was a mess, and obviously there were problems with the rollout, but you sit there and say that no one's going to sign up, and then you have 7 million people who sign up. You have another 3 million people who are on their parents' plan, another 4.5 million that are on Medicaid. And so roughly 15 million people got health care insurance, when we all can admit that health care and the uninsured was a serious problem. But now we're going to say, well, that's all bad because we spent money trying to actually encourage people to sign up. I mean, it's a foolish point.
Well, Chris Wilson, critics of all of this will say that despite what appears to be a hard sell, and despite $700 million, and despite taxpayer dollars going to nearly every single state to push this health care law, arguably we still don't have the numbers that prove that people showed up, that the right demographics actually signed up and are paying for it.
Well, that's exactly right. And I will say it is still a disaster. It is still a mess. In fact, if you look at the HHS's own figures, you need 40% of the enrollees to be young and healthy. And at this point, at best, a quarter are. So what does that mean for the long-term effects of this? It means that premiums, I mean, you just had a report that how many people aren't even paying their first month's bill, but premiums are going to double and triple as we get into the second year. Well, how many people will continue making those premiums? And what about for the rest of us that may have a health care plan we like, that may have doctors we like, that end up losing that plan or being unable to see our doctors? I think to say that because they signed up 7 million people that it's now no longer a disaster and a mess is absolute, again, absurdity.
Chris Kofinas, is the administration, as President Obama, are they celebrating too soon here?
I don't think this is a question of celebrating or not. I mean, I think that here's the problem, I think, for Republicans. They've boxed themselves into a corner on this where they were trying to tout a disaster. Now they're on the defensive and trying to make the argument that 7 million people signing up is somehow now a negative. Now, you could sit there and criticize the law. That's fine. You could sit there and say that there's problems with the law that need to be fixed. I think that's fine as well. But you've got to have an alternative. And the problem that every Republican has, they can criticize it or they can make up stuff that they criticize, but not a single one can come up with a viable alternative or a fix. And that is the problem. Politically, that is just not a sell with the American people. You cannot exploit or try to somehow attack an idea with nothing.
We got to leave it there. The two Chris's. Thank you for joining us.
There we go.
Chris squared.
C squared, huh?
Right. I see a segment developing here. Major aftershocks rattling one country less than a day after a powerful 8.2 quake struck. When will it be safe for those folks to go back home? There are a lot of rattled nerves there again today. Plus, there's this.
Academy right across from there. There was actually a bullet casing found underneath my truck.
As we learn more about that deadly attack at Fort Hood, details about the gunman's mental health, renewing debate about